Welcome to Reasonable Doubt. James Hopkins for the defense.
Welcome to Reasonable Doubt. James Hopkins for the defense. James Hopkins is a top-tier criminal defense attorney with over 30 years of experience in New York State and federal courts. A former ADA, he's tried hundreds of high-stakes cases from homicide, drug crimes, embezzlement, you name it, earning his spot among the top 100 trial lawyers. An expert in forensic DNA evidence and a fierce advocate, Hopkins delivers strategic, high-impact defense for every client. I'm Evan Mack, and today's episode is Road to Recovery, Navigating DWI Charges in New York. James, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you this morning?
I'm well. And before we get into the questions, let me start with kind of your background in DWIs in New York, or just in general for as your career. Like, can you talk to me about your background a little bit?
Sure. Early in my career, I was an assistant DA, and I was assigned to the driving while intoxicated unit. And as a result of that position, I found myself, I had to respond to all the fatal accidents in the area. In order to do so, I received some specialized training. I was sent to Washington, D.C. and Chicago, and I was trained on breathalyzers, and I was actually certified as a breathalyzer operator. And in addition, as a prosecutor, I would present felony cases to the grand jury. So I really have kind of a full-bodied experience with the field. I've seen literally the results of drunk driving resulting in fatal accidents, and I have seen the carnage that has resulted from that, and so I don't want to minimize that. But I also understand it's a very technical issue, and I've been trained in each aspect of that in that field. So since that time, as a defense attorney, I've oftentimes been called upon to represent people who have, for instance, commercial driver's licenses, and any implication that they're driving under the influence could impact their livelihood for a very long time. So I've learned to really scrutinize the evidence and to try to formulate a good defense for everybody that comes to my office.
So James, to segue into that though, how common are drunk driving arrests in and around Syracuse, New York?
Oh, we have hundreds every year.
Wow.
And now there has been a decrease. Obviously the people's social habits have changed over the years. There's not so much going out after work or office parties and the like, but it's still a significant problem. It's probably the easiest way an otherwise law-abiding citizen may run afoul of the criminal justice system. Anybody on any given day may be out with friends and just not thinking for a moment that they're breaking the law, but find out that they are they find themselves with that red light flashing behind them, and their life's about to change. So.
Yeah. Can you explain for the listeners the different levels of seriousness between misdemeanor DWI charges and felony DWI charges in New York?
Sure. Now, again, this is New York State, and I am not,
Yes.
and I'm just, speaking about generalities. There are, any individual case needs to be scrutinized by your own attorney out here. But in general, New York has what they refer to as common law DWI. And that is, in the officer's opinion, your intoxication level has reached a degree that makes it unsafe for you to operate a motor vehicle. That is a misdemeanor for a first offense. If there is a conviction of that and another conviction within 10 years, that second charge is a felony. And a felony can result in state prison time. Multiple offenses can raise the level up to a D felony. There is also a lesser charge, driving while abilities impaired, which is technically classified as a traffic violation, but still results in license suspensions um, and insurance surcharges as well.
So what are the most important things someone should do, like right away when he or she has been arrested and charged with a DWI in New York?
Well, uh, the, um, call your lawyer right away. Um, oftentimes people try to explain their way out of things, and that
Yep.
especially now in in the age of body cams, that may not be the smartest like avenue to pursue. Um, People don't oftentimes realize the level of impairment they may have sustained. Now, as I said, it's probably people's first exposure to the criminal justice system, so they're probably not aware of
Mm.
the way to handle these things. But a good attorney will guide you through that. Um, Usually there is an avenue by which you can pursue a plea bargaining process that may result in lesser charges. Um, but also, any statement that you personally make can be used against you. So, it's better to let your lawyer do the talking for you.
So what about breath or blood tests at the station? Because are you required to give a sample? What happens if you refuse? I think people always feel like they have to do that. Is that something that they have to do in New York or anywhere?
Well, in New York, all licensed drivers are presumed to have given their consent. But when asked by a police officer who has reasonable cause to ask for the blood sample, that means that in the officer's opinion, you have exhibited signs of impairment. They are required to give you a warning about the consequences if you fail to submit uh, to the alcohol test. But you have the right generally to refuse. If you refuse, however, your license is likely to be revoked
Wow.
because of that presumption that you have given your consent to submit to such a test. You're entitled to a hearing. The hearings are fairly pro forma. If the officer establishes that he gave you the proper warnings
Mhm.
and you nevertheless refused, your license is gone, even if you weren't drinking, even if you're not under the influence. So, um, as I said, you're entitled to a hearing before that, but you can have some serious consequences uh, that obtain after that request.
What's going to happen to someone's driver's license after this DWI arrest in New York State, and if the person ends up being convicted, what's that process like?
For the actual misdemeanor or felony offenses, your license will be revoked.
Mm.
Um, that lesser charge that I mentioned earlier, DWAI, subjects you to a suspension period, which means that you get it back after a certain period of time. With a revocation, depending on the level of charges, it's either 6 months or a year before you're able to to reapply for a license. And in New York State, if you have multiple convictions for not only for alcohol related offenses, but perhaps those refusals that you mentioned. Um, if you have a number of those, the Department of Motor Vehicles can refuse to license you basically forever. They do a 25-year look back right now,
Mhm.
and that can have some very serious consequences.
What is the importance of hiring your firm early on a DWI case? Is there anything different that can be done in the early stages of a DWI versus maybe later on?
Well, the majority of cases in DWI arrests don't go to trial. Most result in that plea bargain. The more serious ones, the ones with accidents involved, the ones with people having had multiple convictions, they get a much harder look taken by the prosecutor. In my case, as I said, I'm experienced in the in on both sides of the equation in here. I prosecuted those, so I know what is necessary to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. A lot of times, the the police officer, assumes that there was going to be a plea bargain, and he might just kind of, check off some boxes that may not really, reflect what he actually observed, or she actually observed. If the breath test is not done properly, there is there's a provision, whereby that can be stricken, from use at trial. And what I do is I every single case I have, I prepare as though I'm going to go to trial. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they do. In fact, most don't. But I find that your hand is strengthened considerably if you can show the prosecutor where they have some weaknesses in their prosecution, and if that's presented in a forthright manner and in a way that's convincing, better things happen for your client. And it's important to be able to establish that early on. There are also some time limits. For instance, the breath test have to be administered within a certain time frame. There have to be certain warnings given before that refusal can be used as evidence against you. For blood withdrawal orders, they have to follow a certain procedure. Judges have to sign off on it. There might be a search warrant that has been employed that a competent attorney knows how to attack, and those are the kind of things I look at, and I determine whether or not there is a likelihood that people can prove their case, and if there is, I do this simultaneously. I try to establish the equities on behalf of my client, why this is a one-time thing and something that perhaps they need a break, as opposed to to the severity of the offense. If somebody has just barely over the legal limit, and is an otherwise law-abiding citizen and has remorse and is willing to follow any of the rules to get back into good graces, it's much easier to get a plea bargain. If there's a fatal accident, or if somebody has an extensive criminal history, it's a different story.
So what do you say to individuals who meet you who think they don't have a chance of winning their DWI case?
The simple fact is that in our system, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty,
Right.
and the people must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And I try to explain those factors that I just mentioned to you, and how they may apply to the individual case. And even if they don't have the most solid defense available to them, there's usually something that can be argued. Among the prosecutor looks at this case. They can't take everybody to trial. So what they're going to do is they're going to focus on the most serious cases, the recidivist, the people who are dangers on the highway. The vast majority of people, once they get arrested and it's kind of a wake up call for them, and they're not going to do this again. So we usually have them undertake an alcohol evaluation or a drug evaluation, if it's drug impairment, and determine whether or not they have a problem. And if they have a problem, obviously that makes it more likely they're going to reoffend. So there's I oftentimes refer people to professionals in that field and try to get their input, and try to have them undertake a drug or alcohol program to make sure that they're not going to be viewed as a recidivist. And that is usually an effective means of negotiation with the DA's office, to show that there's these are people who have taken it upon themselves. They don't need the criminal justice system forcing them to stay off the road, and they should be allowed to continue with their employment and their family responsibilities. So, there's usually something we can do.
So James, what do you say sets you apart in defending clients who are facing severe DWI charges in New York? Is it your experience, or do you feel it's something else?
Well, it's a combination of experience. As I said, not that many attorneys in the area had experience on both sides,
Yeah.
and specifically in the DWI field. Um, as I said, I was a prosecutor. I did other things in my days. As a prosecutor, I was in the drug unit. I was in the felony trial unit. I did other things associated with being an assistant DA. But the DWI aspect of it is relatively unique. Okay, being on both sides of in that particular field, and I think that my experience there is stands out among the other attorneys here in town. Besides that, I'm a pretty experienced litigator. I know what needs to be done, and I'm tenacious when I need to be. I'm very easy to negotiate with, but once that line in the sand is drawn, I am very definitely advocating for my client's best interest, and I don't back down on that. So I think that the tenacity and the experience together makes that makes me a good choice.
Mr. Hopkins, thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and thank you all for listening to Reasonable Doubt. James Hopkins for the defense. You can connect with James at jameshopkinslawfirm.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, review the show. We love having you as part of our community. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.